One.
On January 27th of 2019, Spencer Lee and the Iowa Hawkeyes came into Welsh Ryan Arena in Evanston, Illinois to take on Northwestern. This was a highly anticipated meet because back in the end of December of 2018 at Midland, Sebastian Rivera, then the number 2 seed in the nation, faced off against Spencer Lee in the finals of the Midlands and beat him 7-3. So there was a lot of expectation that once the meet came around a month later, being on the 27th, that this would be Spencer's chance to get back at him. We'd see a fired up Spencer Lee. We'd see him make some adjustments to Sebastian Rivera's adjustments. And then from there, we would see if Rivera really got that much better over the course of a year, or if Spencer Lee just kind of had a lapse at the Midlands and would be able to just jump all over him and get another dominant win. He had the 7-4 win before, and then he also had the 12-0 win at Big Tens. So when this meet came around, I got up and actually went out there to go to the meet. I was at Welsh Ryan Arena. And when they did the starting lineups, Spencer wasn't out there. He was in the arena, but he wasn't actually weighed in. It was just Perez. So pretty disappointing there. And I wasn't terribly shocked by it, just because if you've been following my videos over the last month, I had a video on the Sean Russell match against Minnesota, where I noticed that there was a lot wrong with him, that he wasn't taking any shots, that a guy that he had already beaten 15-0 in 2 periods in the 2017 Midlands, he only beat 4-0 without getting a single takedown that he shot in on. So to me, it looks like there's some sort of issue with him, whether it's mono from earlier in the season, whether it's an injury issue that's going on right now. I'm speculating it's a foot injury, but I don't actually know that. But with that being said, I think it's obvious that Spencer Lee isn't at his best right now. So for him not to want to take that rematch right now and give himself another month before Big Tens to heal up before he goes against Sebastian Rivera again, I understand that to an extent. So it wasn't like the most shocking and upsetting thing to me, but apparently Twitter did not agree with that. So just going through some of the tweets here. So this is from Willie Saylor from Flow, one of the co-hosts of FRL. He was talking to a Hawkeye wrestling fan who was just saying, who was just debating him on whether or not it was okay for Lee to sit out. And he was saying, hey, clown shoes, you don't think the perception of the program took a hit today? You don't know that there are recruits saying, Iowa, don't go hard, they protect. Don't be a moron. So Willie's point seems to be that he thinks that not only is it bad for the sport that Spencer Lee sat out this rematch, especially since he was actually wrestling on Friday and got a pin in that match against a ranked opponent. So he's obviously capable of wrestling right now. So the fact that he sat out seems to be Iowa kind of playing strategic, so to speak. My response to that, though, is what point is Willie even trying to make? If a recruit's thinking if I'm in Lee's position, they wouldn't wrestle me, they just have to look back at the Sam Stoll match against Iowa State, where Stoll hadn't yet wrestled this season after coming back from the gunshot wound to the knee. Stoll saw that the meet was close. Got in Brandon's ear, told him, hey, look, I need to get in here. This is my last meet against Iowa State. Let me do it. Let me wrestle. They let him go. He gets the win, and Iowa ends up winning the meet just by 1 point. So a very tight meet. Then Reese Humphrey was saying, if I'm Spencer Lee, there's no chance I let my coach sit me in that duel. If he's hurt, that's a different story, but it didn't look that way. So that's kind of, again, and I saw a lot of former wrestlers and a lot of high-level wrestlers pretty much saying, hey, Spencer Lee really shouldn't have let Brand sit him. And with Brand saying that he sat him, it's hard to say how much of it's on Brand's shoulders and how much of it's on Spencer Lee. If you're a good coach, if you're a responsible coach, you're going to go to the meeting and you're going to say that it's all on you, and that's what Brands did. Maybe it is all on him, or maybe he's just taking the fall for Spencer because Spencer was saying, hey, look, I'm not quite right. Just give it some time. We won't know either way. But either way, the answer that Tom Brands gave was the correct answer for him to give, whether or not that was 100% true or not. And then in my response to Reese Humphrey, I was just kind of reiterating what I was saying before, where I think he's been hurt for a little while. Didn't shoot against Russell a couple weeks ago and seems to be more selective than usual about his shots. And then I mentioned the Stoll thing too. Then Christian Piles also put out a tweet again, Piles is also one of the guys from FRL, just talking about how a lot of guys haven't been wrestling Sebastian Rivera lately. So he's supposed to go against Connor Brown, got a forfeit. Was supposed to go against Sean Russell. Russell forfeited. And then he was supposed to go against Spencer Lee, and they just put out Perez instead. And then one of the responses to that was, I wonder if Brands would have sat Lee and Young if this was a home match. Would he have let the home fans down? If not, then that's disrespectful to the Northwestern crowd. And I commented that the crowd was basically an Iowa crowd, and it pretty much was. The crowd was actually responding louder to the Iowa wrestlers than they were to the Northwestern wrestlers, which was kind of funny, being that it was a Northwestern. But the Iowa wrestling fans tend to travel well, and there's a lot of Iowa grads that are in the Chicago area, so that's really not a huge surprise. Willie Saylor. Willie was pretty upset about this throughout it. For him, it's understandable because with Flo streamed the meet, and pretty much the whole week leading up to it, they were hyping it up. So for them, they're hyping up a specific match, this Lee versus Rivera match, and all of a sudden it doesn't happen. And even though it has nothing to do with Flo, Flo had no idea he wouldn't have happened until the last second. You look bad, you're trying to hype something up the entire week and it doesn't come through. Especially with the Flo subscriptions being as expensive as they are, you don't want people to feel like they're getting cheated. So I understand from his standpoint that if people feel like these regular season matches don't matter, that people are going to keep ducking, then the value of a Flo membership really decreases, especially when the big tournaments, being the Big Tens and the Nationals, at least the finals, tend not to be on Flo. I don't think the Flo has the Big Ten finals, and I know for sure that ESPN has the national finals. So for him, I can understand why he's really upset about it, but he was really going after some people who weren't taking kindly to that on Twitter. So again, he's saying that this Hawkeye wrestling fan's a poor ambassador for Iowa, and he's saying, what would another loss to Sebastian Rivera really do? And the Hawkeye wrestling fan was saying, hey, Lee is off right now, not the score we're used to. Don't know if it's a physical injury or mentally not right, but taking the number one guy wouldn't help either. And why do you think Brand should have wrestled him for Iowa's sake? And then here's, again, similar idea. So this Hawkeye wrestling fan, again, saying, look, I understand you guys have to sell subscriptions, so it's not the best idea, or it's not the best for you when Spencer Lee isn't wrestling, but for Iowa, it seems to be the right move. And I'll get in on that, or once I get through the rest of these, I'll kind of give you guys my take on whether I think it was the right move for Iowa not to wrestle Lee or not. Sebastian Rivera's response was saying that they're hiding from something. And this was when the Wrestling Nomad said that Lee didn't weigh in, and some of the top comments were saying it's become a common occurrence, terrible for the sport, for the Hawkeyes. And there was a really popular GIF response that was just a duck, which is just kind of playing on the idea that Spencer Lee is ducking Sebastian Rivera. So I'll play the interview that Tom Brand gave at the end, and this is what I was talking about, where he was taking full responsibility.
It's in the plan. It's one of those things, a coach's decision and the best decision for them, it's in the plan. It's one of those things where, you know what, we got depth. You know, we get to bring 15 guys on the road, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for what's important. A coach's decision and...
Yeah, so he's saying it's a coach's decision. Now, as far as whether or not I think it's the right decision, I guess first off, you'd have to understand what if Spencer Lee is injured, what's the extent of the injury. To me, with him getting some of the wins he's had lately, even if he's not at his best, he is more than capable of hitting a counter shot on Sebastian Rivera, putting him in a spin cycle and getting a win, even if he's not 100%. So he's capable of winning that match, even if the odds aren't as highly in his favor as they normally would be. A concern about if he goes today and loses is that he'd be 0-2. So then even if he wins at Big Tens, from a seeding standpoint, does he get the 1 seed or the 2 seed? Maybe going 1-2 against Rivera, even if the most recent one is a win, wouldn't be enough to get him the 1 seed at Nationals. Now, is that a big issue? I don't think so. 125 from last year to this year is significantly weaker between guys graduating and between guys just moving up in weight, whether that was to duck Spencer or whether it was just because they were getting bigger. But if you look at who was in the weight class last year, Sebastian Rivera did not All-American, in part because he lost to I'm trying to think who the guy from Utah Valley was, Taylor Lamont. So Taylor Lamont's injured this year, so he's not in the weight class. Nathan Tomasello graduated. Let me think who else. Nick Soriano moved up in weight. Ethan Lezak moved up in weight. Darian Cruz graduated. So there's not a whole lot left of the weight class right now. It's pretty much just Spencer Lee, Nick Piccinini, Sebastian Rivera, and possibly Pat Glory, depending on how he does moving forward in the rest of the season. So either way, for Spencer Lee, whether you're the 1 seed or the 2 seed, you've got a fairly easy route to the final with just Piccinini or Glory kind of along the way. So I don't think seeding is all that important. Another thing that I was getting on here is that it seems like from last season to this season, there's been a lot of adjustments that Northwestern has made to deal with this matchup. Now, this would be a chance for Iowa to adjust back. Then Northwestern would then have to adjust back at Big Tens. Then Iowa would get the last adjustment at NCAAs, which you would think would favor them, but they're not going to have that now, obviously. The adjustments made at the Big Ten are going to potentially be effective for them in the rematch against Sebastian Rivera, likely in the finals, But then whatever adjustments that Iowa makes are then going to be seen by the Northwestern coaching staff, and they'll have a chance to adjust to those adjustments at the national championships. So if Sebastian Rivera makes it all the way through on his end, if Lee makes it all the way through on his end, it'll be interesting to see if that favors Northwestern, or if the main issue here was health for Spencer Lee all along. And if he's in good health, then it's not going to matter at that point, and he's just going to find a way to win the Big Ten and then also win the Nationals at that point. As far as whether or not this is good for the sport, I can see the argument from Flo's standpoint. For Flo, it's important that they can sell a lot of memberships for them to kind of help grow as a company. And as they grow, they can do more for the sport. They can put on more events. In theory, one of the big reasons why Flo is so expensive is because of all the things that they have to do. With there being such a limited market for wrestling fans, they have to charge more just so they can actually cover all their costs. So if you get a lot more people who are into the sport, a lot more people who are buying Flo subscriptions, eventually you'd figure that could drive down the price, or at least put them in a position where they could say, hey, we're going to keep the price the same, but this will be like a no ads version. And then kind of like what you have with ESPN Plus, where ESPN Plus is only $5 a month, but there are ads in it in pretty much everything you watch. So you could have like a version with ads where they're able to sell the ad space because they have enough eyeballs. And then they're able to offer a reduced price there, which would be good for the sport as well. So for them, I can understand from Flo's standpoint why they'd be really pissed off about this happening. And this isn't just like this isn't just this particular meet, but this happens a lot where there's supposed to be a big matchup coming up, and then one of the guys backs out and you don't get anything. Obviously, as we saw before with Sebastian Rivera, he's had 3 straight ranked matchups that should have happened and had 2 forfeits in a guy who will likely never be ranked in his college career with Perez. So I get from their standpoint why they're upset about that. Now, do I think that Spencer Lee was ducking him? Do I think that same goes for Caleb Young too, where Caleb Young did not wrestle Ryan Deacon? Do I think these guys are ducking? I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to. I guess the one reason why it would make sense for them not to wrestle right now is that Young lost to Deacon at Midlands, Lee lost to Rivera, and as I mentioned before, even if Young gets it back at Big Tens, and if Lee gets it back at Big Tens, if you're 1-2, at that point your seeding is going to be affected. And it's like I mentioned with Lee, I don't think seeding is really that big of an issue right now with 125 being where it is, but at 157 it's a much bigger issue. So for Caleb Young, it makes a little bit more sense just to be a little careful with him. But he did just lose against Illinois. So if he could come back and get a win against Deacon, if he's able to get the win there, that might stabilize his ranking and help. But I guess their thinking is just save it all for the Big Tens and have a good tournament there. You're going to get a really good seeding. And then from there, you run into nationals and do your best. As far as all the people who are like ripping at Spencer Lee, though, and saying, hey, look, you got to ask your coach. I think it's just important to note that Lee hasn't been on the top of his game. Yes, he did get the pin against Rutgers. Yes, he did get the pin against Petrowski in the 3rd period. But he doesn't quite look like himself right now. He doesn't look like the best version of Spencer Lee, the version of Spencer Lee that we saw last year in Big Tens, the version of Spencer Lee who took that knee brace off and then just murdered everyone except for Nick Soriano, which was still a pretty dominant match in the national tournament. So I'm not ready to digging on Spencer Lee. Yes, I'm disappointed. Yes, I would have liked to have seen Lee versus Rivera. That was part of the reason why I made the trip out to Evanston to go to the meet today, but it happens. I'm not too pissed off at Lee. I don't think that Lee's the kind of guy who's going to duck anyone. I don't think Lee would be afraid of a guy in Sebastian Rivera who he's 2-1 against with a 12-0 win at Big Tens last year. It seems like the timing wasn't quite right with his health. It seems like they felt that going down 0-2 would hurt seeding, and they really want to have a shot at the number 1 seed still. Is that the right move? I don't know. I think you have to aim for nationals, and I think that taking the match today would have been better for them, just from a standpoint of constant adjustments in the game plan. But I'll trust Tom Brands, I'll trust Terry Brands, I'll trust Spencer Lee over myself on this one, and I'll just have to take their decision for what it is and live with it.